All right, this is the City of Desert Hot Springs regular meeting of the City Council. The City Council serving as a successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency Board for May 5th, 2020. This is our 6 p.m. regular session, and we are via video conference due to COVID-19. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Betts.
Present.
Councilmember Gardner.
Present.
Councilmember Pye.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith.
Present.
And Mayor Mattis.
Present. Do we have Pastor Johnson? Give. Do you see him there, Gerald?
We're thinking the 909 number is Pastor Johnson.
Pastor Johnson, are you there? All right, we have a little technical difficulties. Give us just a minute here. All right, we'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll come back to Pastor Johnson if he joins us for the invocation. Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by Gary Gardner. Gary, you need to unmute yourself.
All right. Everybody, look at the flag on your screen and join me in saluting our nation's flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty for all.
Did Pastor Johnson, was he able to join us?
No.
All right, so we'll skip the invocation tonight and we'll move to the city attorney's report on closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We have one reportable item this evening. The city council voted 5-0 in closed session to approve the resolution. I'm going to read it. The resolution of the city council of the city of Desert Hot Springs requiring all persons to wear protective face coverings and practice social distancing in light of the city declared emergency pertaining to COVID-19. I will make sure that this gets placed on the website as soon as possible and it becomes available to the public as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll go to the approval of the agenda. Does anybody need to pull anything from the consent calendar? Go ahead and speak freely. If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda, including the consent calendar. Gerald, do we have any public speakers on the consent calendar?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to approve the agenda as posted.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
Councilmember Pye.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith.
Yes.
And Mayor Mattis.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. The next item is public comments. At this time, pursuant to the Brown Act, any person may comment on matters of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council, not listed on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the city shall not take action on or discuss matters raised by public comments portion of the agenda that are not listed on the agenda. Do we have any public comments tonight?
We have one public comment from Jessica Gilbert.
All comments are be directed to the City Council, shall be devoid of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during public comments. Jessica, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Great. I just wanted to let you guys know that Saturday night at 8 o'clock, we're having a new comedy night. We have 3 comedians via Zoom. It's $5 a person, and all proceeds raised goes, of course, to the DHS youth. And lastly, I wanted to say that we received a small grant last week for Rotary, and it's going to be going split 3 ways for Food Now, the Senior Center, and Word of Life Ministries. And one last thing, if you decide you want to come to comedy night, go to the Rotary Facebook page and click on the link and sign up. You can also make an extra donation if you choose to. That's it. Stay safe.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Any other public comments, Gerald?
No, Mayor.
All right. With that said, we'll close public comments, move on to City Manager's report. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start out tonight with Luke. Can you talk a little bit about the Royal Emerald tonight?
Oh, sure. So last week, the city sent out a press release regarding a new tenant in the former Kmart building. And so we wanted to be sure to mention that for any viewers of this meeting who may have missed the story. So the new tenant at the Kmart building is Royal Emerald Pharmaceuticals, and they are a research and development company founded in 2017 out of San Diego, California. So they looked at several cities in the Coachella Valley, and the mayor and our economic development team worked closely with them to ensure that Desert Hot Springs would be a good fit. And one of the critical things was the city council's forward thinking on differentiating cannabis testing from that of cultivation and sales. So when the city council put that ordinance in last year, allowing for testing in the commercial district, that helped us reach agreement with Royal Emerald to lease space. So the good news for the city is that the company anticipates hiring 50 new hires as soon as August of this summer, and they expect that number to grow to 10 employees. And there's a range of skill levels on all of these positions. They go from entry level to a research scientist, and the owner has committed to prioritizing local hiring. So the staff's excited for this new development and the new jobs that it's going to bring to the city. And if you want to see more information, go to the city's website under the news and updates section.
Thank you, Luke. Mr. City Manager, you had others?
Yes, I've got quite a few tonight, Mr. Mayor, so if you bear with me. Doria, can you talk a little bit about our COVID-19 process as we're at right now?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So at this point, staff has been given direction that City Council is going to continue to align with the county and the state's stay-at-home orders. With that said, one of the big things that I do want to make sure that the community is aware of is that the City of Desert Hot Springs is going to be collaborating very closely with the county, who is collaborating very closely with the state, on trying to get our readiness plan in place so that hopefully we would be able to move forward with phase 2 rather quickly. The governor has stated that phase 2 of the California reopening plan will be announced on Thursday and will begin as early as Friday of this week. And so the city, as I mentioned, will be pushing very heavily with our collaboration with the county to do anything and everything that we can to continue to support our local businesses and our residents to get businesses back and operational in a safe manner, and our residents back to work. In addition to that, the state of California and the county has come together and has located, or actually asked to place a testing facility within the city limits of Desert Hot Springs. A testing facility will open tomorrow at the Lozano Community Center located at Guy Tedesco Park. They will be conducting tests free of charge to any resident that wants a test. You do not need to be exhibiting symptoms. You need to just go there Tuesday through Saturday, starting at 7 a.m., and you can have a test completed. Getting these tests conducted is going to be crucial in being able to accelerate the reopening plan for the city of Desert Hot Springs and the state as a whole. We continue to see some of the lowest COVID-19 cases throughout the Coachella Valley. Desert Hot Springs does. As of today, we have 40 confirmed cases, 0 deaths. And we want to thank the community for that. You guys following the stay-at-home orders, maintaining social distancing and wearing the face covers is really helping. It has helped to flatten the curve, and we really want to thank the residents for that. Thank you very much, City Manager.
Thanks, Doria. unbeknownst to you, we've had an update from the county reference the testing site for COVID-19. Chief, can you give the update on that?
Okay, as Doria had mentioned, we were chosen to host a site. Most of the equipment's in. They're still working on staffing. They're hoping for Thursday or later this week. But as soon as we find out, we will send that out. Like Doria said, the appointments will be taken either through the internet or a 1-800 number. It'll be on our social media site, and it's for anyone in the county, not just the city.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. Thanks, Doria, as well. Danny, can you please give an update on Palm Drive?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Palm Drive, the phase 1 project, which is from Camino Ventura to Two Bunch Palms. The traffic signal loops were completed on Thursday, April 23rd and Friday, April 24th. And Siemens went out and verified that the loops were working correctly and that all signals are back to normal operations with the timing and the detection. The striping, the second coat was installed started actually last Thursday, April 30th, and it continued this week. We did have some changes that we made, and those changes were implemented this week. The final punch list, they're working on them, and we expect to complete it in the next 2 weeks or so for this project. The Palm Drive Phase 2, which is from Two Bunch Palms to Pearson, there were some lane closures the last couple of weeks. The number 2 lane southbound, south of Hacienda, was closed for the removal replacement of the subgrade and new asphalt, and the new asphalt was installed on Friday, April 24th. And then the number 1 lane southbound, south of Hacienda, was closed for removal and replacement of subgrade and new asphalt, and the new asphalt was installed on May 1st. Both sections will receive a 2-inch cap at the end of the project, where it would align with all the new and the final grade. The traffic signal at Palm, Desert View, and Pearson and Choya. The Pearson and Choya traffic signal, the signal cages were installed and the concrete was poured. There is a timing on the concrete curing for that, and they were going to continue to connect the electrical connection points for the Pearson and Choya site. The Palm and Desert View, they potholed and found the utilities. They're boring for conduits, and for the signals has already been completed. And last week and this week, they will be installing the traffic signal cages and the concrete for the bases. That's the updates I have for Palm Drive. I'll send it back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. And for the council and the public's information, myself, the deputy city manager, the assistant city manager, and the finance director meet every Monday morning, especially since COVID-19 has changed the forecast financially for the city as well as everyone else. We meet every Monday to discuss the current status of where our revenues and expenditures are. So I've asked Jeffrey to give a brief update on where that is and where we are in the budget development process for next week. As we've said before, the revenues are ever changing, and this is a living document, so we're trying to keep on top of it as we continue to move through the rest of this fiscal year and move into next fiscal year. Jeffrey?
Yes, thank you. So as of May 1st, 2020, the Consolidated General Fund has received $14,568,678 in revenues and made $18,004,569 in expenditures. There are still several major revenue sources that the city is going to receive. We still have like 3 months of the cannabis taxes from the dispensaries, the January to June 2020 cannabis taxes for cultivators, property taxes coming in May and June, the public safety parcel tax, the triple flip VLF, franchise fees, and the utility users tax. Those are the major ones. We're expecting at least $5.6 million from those coming in, and then there'll be other smaller revenues possibly coming in. In an effort to continue to keep expenditures down, the city is still frozen the vacant positions. We've canceled all travel and delaying the start of one-time projects that the city already does not have contractual obligations for. So due to COVID-19, the city's estimated we estimated they have revenue reductions of over $1 million, which is being offset by expenditure reductions and revenue increases from other sources. Since the mid-year budget adjustments that were brought to the council on April 7th, there have been some additional further reductions in revenue estimates for sales tax, and transient occupancy tax in the amount of $171,000. So reducing our revenues by $171,000. However, the bright spot, the cannabis taxes for dispensaries are actually coming in higher than estimated, and I think then that additional revenue will be sufficient to cover this additional loss in sales tax and TOT revenue. So at this time, I'm estimating the ending fund balance at 6/30/2020 for the general fund to be $10,969,424, which is a reduction of over $469,000, of which $482,000 was approved. We used to use fund balance to purchase replacement heavy equipment in November 2019. So this reduction is actually nothing. It's nothing that hasn't been planned for. As of May 1st, the cash balance in the consolidated general fund is $8,777,095. $2.9 million of that is set aside for operations. $3.7 million is reserved for natural and fiscal emergencies. $750,000 is reserved for future capital use, and almost $1.4 million is in the emergency reserve funded by the cannabis tax revenues. At the end of this fiscal year, we estimate another $950,000 of cannabis revenues will be transferred into the emergency reserve. So for fiscal year 2021, I'm actually estimating a reduction of revenue from the general fund in the amount of $682,000 from fiscal year 1920. So these revenue estimates are based on the assumption that the shelter-in-place order will be eased by July 1st, but that economic recovery is going to be slow. So due to that, for fiscal year 2021, the city will continue to freeze vacant positions and then to delay one-time expenditures such as special projects and improvement projects in order to preserve cash. In this budget, we have some revenue benchmarks built into it for fiscal year 2021 to determine if additional expenditure cuts would be needed if those revenues do not meet the benchmarks, or if the frozen positions can be filled or one-time projects can be started if the revenues actually exceed those benchmarks. So these measures also will provide us some flexibility in case there's a resurgence of COVID-19 during the flu season and the state goes back down on lockdown again.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And as you can see that we'll be bringing this to the council every 2 weeks as a report. Please provide any questions you might have to me, and I'll pass them along to Jeffrey so we can get your answers. But we are paying close attention to the ebbs and flows of what's happening currently with the economy and how it's impacting the city. As of right now, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to mayor and council member comments. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Robert Griffin.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. April was very much a slow month for most of the committees that I was on, but now we are really ramping back up. So I attended my first CVET board meeting in over 2 months. Most of what went on in that meeting was discussion about the economic impact that we are suffering and then the need to diversify our basic business space. One of the things that they've been working on is, which I believe has been put on hold, was the talk of a California State University campus out here, which many of us were pushing for. The thinking is that with the current events, that's going to be put on hold. We don't know for how long, but they're still pushing it. And so that's one thing that we're kind of hoping in the future we can have that kind of business here and attract other businesses, which will help to diversify our business base so that we don't have to suffer as much. We're very heavily invested in tourism, and that has taken such a big hit. Having this R&D facility come in here is it's a real nice thing because it does diversify our workforce, and so we can maybe handle little bumps in the financial road better in the future than we are now. Also attended a meeting of the Hot Springs Business and Trade Association last week. That meeting was mostly focused on the current regulations and laws, the SBA loans, the PPP loan, the idle loans, those kind of things that some people were able to obtain. And then they parlayed that into another working group, which I'll talk about in a minute. I had DHS Family Alliance meeting, and our focus in the past has been on reducing absenteeism in the hopes of getting students better prepared for college or trade school. Right now, the absenteeism issue is not a focus simply because people are not in school. However, they're working on a little program right now. It's called Glow Up. The final grades will be June 5th, and the way the school district is operating right now is that whatever grade in your classes that a student had when they stopped going to school, that will be your grade. It won't go below that. But they're pushing for students in grades 5 through 12 to continue to work, do their schoolwork, and what you can do is you can actually raise your grade even more. So I would firmly urge parents to kind of push their students. It's an opportunity to get a better grade in a very easy way. Mostly you just have to be involved. I also did a Hot Springs Business and Trade Association working group on reopening guidelines. So obviously we're all very eager to open up, and unfortunately, it's not going to be as easy as we all think. It's not going to be just turn your lights on and your business is good. We've discussed today some guidelines on things, but in this task force, it was about really taking a look at overall operations and guidelines for hot springs owners in particular. Things such as the new legal land that we have. We have newer OSHA regulations. You will have sick leave issues. We'll have supply chain issues, things that you're going to have to take a look and plan for your business in order for you to open and keep both you, your employees, and your customers safe. So that's one of the groups that I'm actually working on this on. And then I'm also parlaying that into a group for the Hoteliers Association to look at the guidelines for hotels around here. And then what I did is I tossed out on social media that I was going to build a task force for DHS businesses. And the purpose is just for us to talk about individual businesses, take a look at guidelines from different, there's different organizations. There's the Department of Labor guidelines, there's OSHA guidelines, there's CDC guidelines. They have OSHA, CDC, a whole bunch of them here, and kind of compile all of these into one place so that the people who have their businesses and want to open can reference it. They're not going to have to go dig through all these different places for all the different recommendations. And just to get an idea on how to prepare to open up. I know we're all eager to open up. We have the stage 2 coming, and hopefully stage 3 won't be far behind that. I think having the testing here might speed that up, and that would be my hope. But now is the time to start planning on the things that you're going to need to open up. And that's the purpose of this group. I want to thank Tara Wilson and Jessica Gilbert for stepping up and offering to join me. And if anybody's else interested, please do not hesitate to give me a shout. We'll probably have our first Zoom meeting this week. I would like this to be a very quickly moving thing, and hopefully in the next 2 weeks we can have some guidelines. By that time, maybe we'll be a lot closer to opening up even further. Also on April 30th, I want to thank the Chandi Group, who provided 3,000 meals for a lot of our residents. I was there to help give them out, as was the mayor and Councilman Gardner, and also a number of people from Rotary. And it was a bit of a warm day, but it was really nice to be able to hand out these free lunches to people in need. So I really want to thank Chandi Group for stepping up for our citizens. It's nice to see business owners that are looking out for our residents. And that is pretty much all I have. But again, if you're interested in helping me take a look at guidelines that we can have for your particular business, please contact me. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to our invocation, as Pastor Johnson had some difficulty getting on, but I understand that he's on now. Can we unmute him and let him give an invocation?
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, I am so sorry. I profusely apologize. I've been trying to get on since about 5:55, and I don't know what I was doing wrong, but I guess I got it figured out.
No worries.
Thank you for your patience. Gracious Father, we want to just take time once again to just say thank you. Thank you for being the author and finisher of our faith, our Alpha and our Omega, and our beginning and our ending. We want to take time, Lord, to ask you to look on our first responders, the nurses and the doctors, the fire departments, the police departments, oh God. And not only, Lord, we ask you to take care of them while they are going through this pandemic, but we're asking you, Lord, to touch their minds and their hearts even when the pandemic is over, because, Lord, we do not want any of our first responders to end up with PTSD or any other thing that would mentally affect their ability to be able to do the work. We want to thank you, Lord, on today and bless this day of Cinco de Mayo. Let the blessings of the Lord be upon our people on this wonderful day. And Lord, we ask you to bless our president, the Senate and Congress, and God, give them wisdom to understand, Lord, that it's all about humanity. And we're asking you to continue to look on our mayor and the city council, oh God, the work that they're doing, the work that those that are feeding the hungry, Lord, make provisions for them, give them the volunteers they need, give them the resources they need, and let the blessings of the Lord be upon us as we navigate through this pandemic, knowing that you are in control and that we are in your hands. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. We're gonna go back to mayor and council member comments at this time. The next one up is Councilmember Russell Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attended a Sunline Transit Agency meeting and have another one with the Finance Committee coming up soon. It was a 20 agenda item at Sunline, so we've gotten dialed in on how to do the Zoom meetings. Just a couple items on that were of significance. Went over the budget for Sunline, and even though ridership is down 65%, the finances seem to be in pretty good shape. And then we continued the agreement for the attorney legal services. And then the other one that's coming up, the big challenge is for the taxi cabs who are facing a very down economy, and Sunline made some concessions on the regulatory fees that keep them going. Attended a few of the governor's seminars, as I'm sure everybody else has, on the different steps that they're taking. It's very informative. It's too much to get into here, but they are open to the public, so if anybody wants to keep in tune with that, it's a fun hour or two. Be going up to Los Angeles, well, actually be attending via this Zoom, SCAG, Community and Economic and Human Development Committee. At the change of that, I've gotten an appointment to continue at SCAG on transportation, so that was good news. I got that vote out of the Sunline, at the CVAG transportation, so that was good. I'm happy to be continuing to serve up there. I've been up there 10 years, and so I'm excited about continuing on that. Real happy to see staff working on keeping track of the numbers. When I hear 682,000 down, there's two things that come to mind. First is that number will probably go lower, but the most important point is that, I mean, we'll probably see a bigger hit to our revenue than that. But the most important point is there are cities all across California that will be very, very happy to have that kind of number. And I don't want to paint too rosy a picture, but we are not sitting in the worst position. One of the seminars that the league put on was cities talking about their finances and how they're going to try and get some relief out of the governor. And some of them are just really, really bad shape, as they've shared. I'm still asking questions. I'm very happy to have the reporting on the finances. I'm just wondering if we've said anything for a budget meeting. Not everything on the budget is about, where the numbers are. Some of it is what future spending priorities. And if you can hear that noise in the background, that's my loud family. So can you guys hear that? I could get up and go yell at them, but I won't do that. Local, let's see what else we got. My concern is there's a lot of non-essential businesses that have been closed, but that might not be necessary for them to close. And I'm hoping to get some kind of an inventory. I don't know how long this thing's going to go on, But, you know, there may be some businesses out there that are under the assumption they had to close and they might not have needed to. I don't know if that's prevalent or not. I'm aware of a couple, so working with them. Very good news on the testing center. Having to drive down to Indio is a long drive for people. That was the closest testing, unless you happen to belong to one of the hospital groups that's putting on testing. Do we have anything regarding a hiring seminar? I'm getting asked about this for the new R&D facility in the Kmart building. Do we have anything going for a a job fair?
Are we answering that?
Yeah, I'll take a break. I'm running out of breath.
So I know that Denise is going to be working with both Royal Pharmaceuticals, grocery outlets, and some of the other businesses that are going to be opening. But there's nothing that's set in stone at this point on a job fair. But the economic development manager will be working with those organizations that are planning to open here in the next couple of months.
Great. So the answer was they're working on it already, right? That's what
Correct.
I kind of figured would be the answer. But hey, there's people asking and they're listening now, so they can hear that. They're going to ask where they apply, and city will probably put out an announcement on that, correct?
Correct. All information on job fairs for any business opening up in the city that Denise will be helping with will be posted on our social media accounts and our website.
Okay. And then I had here noted twice, I guess, the budget presentation. It must be really important for the council to get together and start working out. We got 42 days until the second meeting in June, so that's not leaving a lot of time. Met with the local cosmetologists here in the city. That would be hairdressers and hairstylists and barber salon owners. And we developed a set of COVID protocols. This is something along the line of what Robert announced that he's working on. We got those to the local task force here, the Coachella Valley Task Force that's and got those presented in front of them, and also put it in front of a working group of the county supervisors. When they found out I was working on it, they asked me to provide it, so I did. It's got 15 points for salons to open up. And I know people think that salons are one of the most, must be a dangerous place to go in a time like this. And, you know, salon owners are obviously going to disagree. But I took a walk into some of the major box stores down in Palm Springs, and I tell you, I just turned around and left. The protocols in place down there are horrid. And I won't get on that soapbox, but what I do want to say is we got a lot of small businesses out there that are really hurting. And we might need to take a look and see if there's something we can do, because I don't think people realize, but it's been 7 weeks that some of these businesses, some of our community members have gone without any income at all. That's a long, long time for a small shopkeeper to be out of business. And I know we keep hearing, well, we're in stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. It's coming along down the road, but these people are wondering, you know, what's a date that they can open? And I understand that we've got to pay attention to the state. We've got to watch that carefully. A salon owner down in Texas was just fined $7,000 and 7 days in jail. So I don't imagine that, you know, things would be too much differently if people try and open up. Just want you to know that everybody out there is listening. The council is really concerned about this and working on it. And I know I am. And so somehow we've got to get these small businesses opened up and opened up safely. The ensuing poverty, what's being projected out there, is going to make 2008 look like a very mild economic depression. And so I'm just encourage everybody, whatever you can do, even the businesses that are open, whatever you can do to go support them. The restaurants, do so. We've got restaurants that just would love to have you there. So I make that pitch all day long. I just want to make sure that people are aware that there's still people out there that are not getting any help, despite many, many promises of help. And, you know, I wish the governor would focus a little bit more on those businesses and those people that haven't gotten help, and a little less on his press conferences, but I'll save that editorial for another day. Looking over here quickly. That's all I got, except to continue to ask for a third time to get when we're going to have a budget meeting so we can start setting priorities for the coming year. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Jampai.
I want to piggyback on Mayor Pro Tem Griffith when he talked about glow up. what glow up is, it's a new term that students are using. In my day, it was called grooving, and now it's glow up, and it's for you to do better than what you have been doing. And also the school district is developing signs for the graduation class here in Desert Hot Springs. Lift to Rise just got $2 million to continue helping people with utility, rent, and other needs, and also small business. So if you have a problem with small business, you go to Live to Rise and the Economic Protection Plan, and something different than what they had before. They're now asking you if you want to have updates. The current plan was $200 per applicant, and it ends May 31, and the new plan starts June 1. The cooling, they're also trying to, this is separate, trying to do cooling centers throughout the valley, and the city is included. This one will be different. Instead of just housing people, they will be housing and giving them wraparound services with health, with trying to find a permanent job for them, and it will be 24 hours rather than just nighttime. And for the rest, I hope for all of you to have a safe Cinco de Mayo and a safe Happy Mother's Day. I'm done.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along with Mayor Pro Tem Griffith, I wanted to say a hearty thank you to the Chandy USA group and the local Indian Sikh community for donating all those wonderful meals last week. I was fortunate to join the mayor and him in distributing them. The one thing I did notice while I was there, it was quite an eye-opener to see exactly how many people were lined up for not only the free meals, but for their regular Food Now distributions that morning. And we are so fortunate to have Food Now in our community, and also have that additional help from the Chandy group at this time. If anything good is to come out of this pandemic, it's how it's showing all of us that we're interconnected and that we're a community of givers here who step up at a time of crisis. And that's kind of the rainbow at the end of this storm. Did a Zoom meeting with the Greater Palm Springs Convention and Visitors Bureau. Some great work coming out of them, gearing up for when we can reopen and tourists can come back. They're doing a yeoman's work of keeping interest alive with virtual tours and messaging like pause now and play later, and stay in, take out, and oasis at home, plan now, meet later. They put up a very nice video about hiking in Desert Hot Springs, actively working on plans on how to reopen once we can and still be able to enforce social distancing and extra cleaning and sanitizing, things like that. And lastly, I know what a struggle this has been for everyone, both financially and socially. And I appreciate very much the residents who take this seriously and who do their best to comply. All that work has paid off, I think. We've seen greatly reduced incidents of transmission and illness and death here in the valley, and particularly in the city. So that tells me what we're doing is working. But that being said, I'll echo the comments of Councilmember Betts and others that it's time to start transitioning out once the state and the county give us the go-ahead. And we're waiting on that, essentially. We are planning on exactly how to do that. It will be a gradual transition. It won't happen overnight. So we all need to remain diligent and abide by the guidances as they change. And if we do this right, I'm confident that we'll get through this with both a minimal loss of life and illness and a minimal loss of long-term economic impact. But we can't really do that till the state and county give us the green light. And your city council and your mayor and your city staff are constantly meeting with and discussing with our elected leaders on the state level and the county level about what we need. And we're pressing them hard for the authority to begin opening up DHS when we can and letting us make our own decisions here in DHS for what's best for our city. And I'm hopeful that we'll start to see some of that come out in the next couple of weeks. So I appreciate that very much. And that's all I've got, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief also tonight. I had many meetings these last couple of weeks. They have mostly been on Zoom. KESQ did an all mayors 2-night panel on KESQ regarding the coronavirus. So you can go back and look at that if you want to hear what the different mayors had to say. Gary and I were able to take a tour of Maria Lease. I forget what's the new name of the hotel, Gary? You're going to have to help me out with that.
It's the Azure Palms Hot Springs.
So this is the old, gosh, I forgot the name.
The
CJ Grant. Thank you.
Old semi-quality inn for a few days.
Yeah, quality inn. They said it's on Hacienda. So I know a lot of you have seen construction going on up there. And Maria Lease was the owner of a small boutique hotel in Desert Hot Springs, came back to the city after selling that a couple years later to buy this larger hotel and turn it into a great hot springs for the city of Desert Hot Springs. So pretty proud of what she's doing there and pretty excited for what it's going to be for Desert Hot Springs. It's definitely a signature resort. So kudos to her. The Realtors Association had a Zoom meeting. They've been inviting public officials on to talk to the realtors about this day and age and what we're doing within our community. So I was honored to do that last week. League of California Cities had all the mayors on for an update, and I attended that. There'll be more meetings coming up. We did a meal program webinar recently, which talked about the food programs in Desert Hot Springs. We had the school district, Food Now, and the senior center on there. So if you have questions, you can catch our webinar on our Facebook or YouTube. Food Now and then the Shandi Group. This was a wonderful, great humanitarian effort for our community. The Chandi Group is a group that owns a lot of the AMPMs across the valley and other developments. Chandi gives a lot back to the community, the Coachella Valley. The Sikh faith community joined him in putting together 3,000 hot meals last Thursday, and within 24 hours after notifying us, was here to distribute those. We utilized Food Now's lines. The Mayor Pro Tem and I helped to give food out, and Gary joined Rotary in making sure that food got to the senior center and came back to help with those foods. So I appreciate everybody's participation in that. It was a last minute thrown together as quick as possible, and we gave out 3,000 meals. The Chandi Group and the Sikh faith-based community, again, I want to thank them for doing this. They also stated that they wanted to come back to Desert Hot Springs in the next few weeks and do it again. So this is a great opportunity for our city and our residents to get a hot meal for the day. Met with the Little League board recently. They've made requests to see if their season could open, and obviously in the day and age that we're in, that request has been denied for right now. They're looking at possibly opening their season later this year if possible, but we don't know if that'll even happen. So met with the board to answer questions directly to the board of directors so that they could be able to explain to their parents why we can or cannot have a field full of kids and parents and all those. So working through that with their district administrator to make sure that everybody's on the same page here in our city. CVAG Transportation met, and as Councilmember Betts alluded to, the CVAG Transportation appointed him to the SCAG Transportation between him and a council member from Palm Springs. That needs to be ratified by the executive committee, which will be done soon. As soon as the next executive committee is there, he will take the place of Lisa Middleton, who was the appointee, who has conflicting meetings on those days, so she had to give the other appointment up. Tomorrow, I'll be meeting with the county supervisor. The county supervisor is calling all mayors to meet together, two at a time, and be able to do a roundtable discussion with the county supervisor. The first part of the meeting will be us being able to talk with the supervisor one-on-one, getting some updates from the county. The second part of the meeting will be live on Facebook. I'm not exactly sure if you just type in the county supervisor, Manuel Perez, or on the county, Riverside County's Facebook, but it'll be a live stream, and we'll be able to ask questions from Desert Hot Springs and Palm Springs and try to get answers to some of the questions we have. As alluded to in some of the reports by staff and some of our council members, there's a lot of questions out there about what we're doing with the COVID virus and how we're going to get small business open, how we're going to keep our citizens safe. And as you heard from closed session tonight, that the emergency ordinance has been, or an ordinance has been put into effect for mask wearing, because we're not sure exactly what the county is going to do. We hear a lot of rumors that they're going to revert back to the state and go from there. So with that said, we want to make sure that we're all safe here in Desert Hot Springs. Very encouraging to hear that there's a testing site here. We were very fortunate to be able to advocate for a testing site here in Desert Hot Springs and receive one. Now, again, if you didn't hear the first time, this is a testing site that is available for anyone by appointment only. So you must have an appointment to attend. I believe that information will be on our website under the coronavirus tab. And you can make an appointment whether you're sick or not. If you want to be tested to see if you have the virus or carry the virus, you can do that. That'll be your choice. It's not mandated by the state. It is free, though, if you choose to do so. I've been having a lot of questions about the graduation here in Desert Hot Springs and the 2020 students, and I think we all feel bad about that. The school district, obviously school has been canceled, and they're doing distant learning for right now, trying to get kids' grades up, and the state has an order that kids will not go back to school anytime before June 19th. And so that leaves the seniors for 2020 with no graduation. Now, I know the school district is doing a lot to promote them virtually, and there was a website started in Coachella Valley to support students, and my wife adopted 2 students from Desert Hot Springs High School to give them gifts and say thank you and get them moved on to college. So we're excited about that. You can go to, I believe it's in the Coachella Valley Forum of Facebook, and you can adopt students from Desert Hot Springs and help give them a going away present, or however you choose, for their graduation. And as soon as we meet with the school district, we'll try to post most of the factual information on there. There's been a lot of questions about that, so we'll do that. Let's see. Lastly, I want, or two last items real quick. One, I wanted to say that we're doing everything we can from the city of Desert Hot Springs to make sure that we reopen our city safely. We reopen our city to comply with county and state ordinances, and that we will give a full update once the governor makes his announcement on Thursday, and after the county makes their announcement. I believe they're delaying their response here for the next week. But once we get some full information and factual information, our PIO and Assistant City Manager Doria Williams will join me on a messaging from the city on exactly what this means for our community. I know a lot of you are very anxious to get back to work. A lot of you are very anxious to get your businesses back open. And we are not here to put roadblocks up, but we are here to comply. And so as we get the information, we will make that happen to you, as all of us are very, very concerned and unified on the messaging that's coming from the City Council. And last, I just wanted to best wishes to Donna Lozano. If you don't know her, she's a public safety commissioner for the city of Desert Hot Springs. She's a longtime family member through the city. Her mother was a founding member of Little League and many other organizations here in Desert Hot Springs, and she's been a staple here in Desert Hot Springs. She had a minor heart attack, or no, she had a major heart attack on Friday. Very fortunate that she has a very strong heart and went through a quadruple bypass today and came out with flying colors. I was just notified about a half hour ago that she is in ICU and she is doing very, very, very well. The doctor says she has a very strong heart. So wish her the best, and she'll be home very, very soon. With that said, I am done. And we will move on to our first public hearing, which is item number 3. This is the development permit number 20-5, an application to develop 11 single-family homes within the Sunset Springs Residential Development, tract map number 31235. And before we start, Mr. Betts, I think you have to recuse yourself.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I actually have a home in Sunset Springs, so this is about as close as you can get on a proximity recusal. So I will be leaving the meeting until this agenda item is over.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And before we move on, the city manager forgot one thing he wanted to make a note on.
Well, I was hoping that Councilmember Betts would still be there. Hopefully he can hear me, but I know he's been asking for these budget meetings for the last couple of meetings. The Finance Department as well as management has been working diligently to get that in front of you. We anticipate the first meeting in June. We're currently working on the CFDs, the DMDs, the LMDs, and those funds to ensure that everything is together and we have a complete budget before we bring it forward. The fortunate thing is June has an opportunity for a third council meeting if we do not get enough input or have enough time for council to be able to make their additions or changes to that budget. So it starts, I think it's the 2nd of June, and we anticipate we will have it approved by either the second meeting, or if we have to have a third meeting, it'll be the last meeting in June. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're so welcome. Thank you. We'll go back into item number 3, and this will be a presentation of our Community Development Director, Rebecca Deming.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm actually going to introduce Patricia Villa-Gomez, our Assistant Planner. She's going to go ahead and do the staff report and presentation on this one.
Hello, and good evening, everybody. Oh, why is it not changing? The project is for the development of 11 new single-family homes within the Sunset Springs residential development. The project is located north of Mission Lakes Boulevard on the west side of Sonora Drive within the residential low district. Here are some of the already existing homes within the Sunset Springs development. The proposed homes will be built and designed so that they are consistent with the development standards and architectural of the previously approved development permit and design. The proposed elevations have a desert contemporary Mediterranean design utilizing stucco exterior finishes with an accent trim, clay roof tiles, and optional stone veneer accents. The two models are staggered and reversed with optional gated courtyards so that specific models are not repeated on adjacent lots to vary the architecture along the street frontages. Staff has provided a table outlining the proposed models, the allocation of interior floor space, and the architectural finishes. Staff would like to note that a condition has been added as condition number 2 for the applicant to install a tan block wall to match existing surrounding properties. The typical standard front yard will utilize drought-tolerant landscaping with a combination of trees, shrubs, and small accent plants to balance aesthetic and water usage. On June 15, 2004, the City Council approved tract map number 31235 for a 63-lot subdivision, a development permit and design review for the development, architectural design, and landscaping review. Then on June 4th, 2013, Coachella Valley Housing Coalition received approval for development permit and design review for the architectural design for 32 new single-family residences. On April 14, 2020, the Planning Commission recommended to City Council for approval with the added following conditions. The RV space shall not be used or approved as rental or living units, added as condition number 5. If homes are being marketed for RV parking, then they must meet code prior to final sales, added as condition number 6. On June 15, 2004, the City Council approved the original project and in doing so adopted the mitigated negative declaration for the project. Pursuant to CEQA regulations, once an M&D has been adopted for a project, no subsequent environmental review needs to be completed unless there are substantial changes in the project that warrant additional review. Staff recommends that the City Council approve development permit number 20-5, subject to the proposed conditions of approval and findings to develop 11 vacant lots within the Sunset Springs residential development tract map number 31235. That concludes my staff report, and I am available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. With that, I'll entertain questions. Does any council members have a question? Yes, Jan.
I have a question. The developer has started already building homes. Is that okay?
You mean at the Sunset Springs?
Yes.
They have not started construction.
I believe they have.
So we're not aware of any construction starting. The applicant is here and we can definitely take a look. They are actually also building in the Rolling Hills project, which is immediately south. And that one was previously approved, and I believe they have permits in their building there. However, these are lots north of that in a separate project. So we can definitely take a look into what's going on out there.
It looks good, but I was just wondering if they needed to do that before we did this. That's all.
Any other questions? All right, I'll move to opening public hearing and taking testimony from the applicant. Would the applicant like to make any comments? Who is the applicant? I'm sorry, who is here for the applicant? Do we know?
The applicant is Gary Wine.
Gary, would you like to make any comments? Do we have to unmute him?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute him.
Gary, can you hear us now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Gary.
Yes, my name is Gary Weintraub with Watermark Homes, and I am here for any questions that staff or yourself may need to be answered.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll go on to public testimony. Those in favor, is there anybody in favor of this? Gerald, where'd you go? You disappeared on me.
I'm right here. We have no additional public testimony on this item.
So I have nobody in favor, I have nobody opposed, and I have nobody in a neutral position. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there anything, Gary, you'd like to add?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like just to make a comment that we have not started up there on the project. There has some residue of some existing roof trusses, but Watermark Homes has not started anything up there. The development has been partially completed with retaining walls, side yard walls, rear walls, and whoever built houses up there previously left some trusses on the lot. So it may look like there was some activity, but we have not done anything.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Anything else you'd like to add?
Not at this time.
All right, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and I'll take more discussion from the council. Any other comments? I see everybody shaking their head no, so at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we accept the staff recommendations for the application to develop the 11 single-family homes. And Mr. Weintraub, welcome, and we're excited to have you here.
I will second.
There is a motion by Mr. Gardner and a second by Mr. Griffith. Is there any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember.
Yes, aye.
Councilmember Pai.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith.
Aye.
And Mayor Mattis.
Aye.
Mayor,
One abstention.
Yes.
Go ahead. Repeat. Go ahead and say that again, Joe.
Motion passes unanimously with a recusal by Councilmember Betts.
Thank you. Get Councilmember Betts back on the screen. There he is. Move on to item number 4, an ordinance amending Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code, section 17.40.110, fences, walls, and hedges. Community Development Director, Rebecca Deming.
Thank you, Mayor Council. The City of Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code regulates fences in section 17.40.110. The municipal code currently provides that the community development director must make findings in order for the applicant to erect a fence. Such findings are cumbersome and impede the development of fences, especially where fences are necessary. The proposed ordinance seeks to 1, not require such findings as they are cumbersome and not needed. 2, allow for more color options for block walls so long as the color matches and complements the adjacent structure. And 3, originally proposed allows for chain link fencing on property over 5 acres where the code compliance manager deems that fencing is needed to inhibit nuisances. At the Planning Commission hearing on April 14th, they recommended City Council to approve the ordinance with the following changes. This includes removing the allowance for chain link fences along street frontages of vacant properties, but allowing split rail fencing, and removing the post and wire, again to be replaced with split rail. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll entertain questions from City Council before I open up the public hearing. Would anybody like to have comments before the public hearing is open? Mr. Betts.
Yeah, I need some clarification on what staff envisions for chain link fencing. I'm not clear on that. I thought we didn't allow chain link fencing along street frontages. Why would that be a change of the Planning Commission?
So staff originally found, and speaking with code compliance, that there were some issues on vacant properties in keeping people out of the property and nuisances and dumping and things like that. And so staff had recommended that we allow chain link on larger vacant properties.
What's a larger vacant property?
It was 5 acres. So minimum size is 5 acres. So not small 10,000 square foot lots. It would only be allowed on 5 acre or larger in size.
Okay, and so the smaller lots where we've seen some of that going on, the staff is recommending that those not have chain link fence. I'm just trying to figure out what the Planning Commission was doing compared to what staff was recommending.
So usually on smaller lots, staff feels that it's more aesthetic and cost effective to fence it in with other city approved materials such as tubular steel or other type of fencing. However, on large 5 acres, it's much harder to fence that in with something at that kind of cost. So staff did originally recommend chain link. However, they allowed it to continue on the rear and side yard, but the Planning Commission recommended not allowing it on the frontage as Councilmember Betts mentioned, and instead allowed for split rail fencing.
Okay, that gives me the clarification I need, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments before we open the public hearing? Gary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm concerned that the Planning Commission recommendations on removing the cable and wire fencing as well. We need to revisit that. We have to have the ability to use chain link in those large properties and to secure those large vacant properties, which was the intent of the draft ordinance. Set back 5 feet in front of the property, I don't see an issue with that. But we also have to continue to use the post and wire fencing. It's how all of our multi-species habitat conservation plan land is fenced off now. It allows for the free flow of wildlife and animals, which is an essential part of that act. And for whatever reason, the Planning Commission pulled that out. I have no thoughts really about the split rail or post rail fencing as they recommended. It could be an appropriate option. It's always good to have options, but I do believe we need to put that both the chain link and the post rail or post wire fencing back into it.
Any other comments? All right, at this time, it's Robert.
Yeah, so I watched the whole Planning Commission thing, and I agree on the aspect that chain link is not real pretty. But if the goal is to close these properties off to dumping or homeless moving in or something like that, I don't know that a split rail fence is really going to do a whole lot of good. One, those things dry out, especially in this environment, really fast and splinter, and they're very easy to remove. So I don't know that I'm real happy with the split rail thing. Also, the post and wire seems to work pretty good too. I know the comment was, well, someone can come up with bolt cutters and cut it. They can come up with a saw, unless you've got some major, 10-foot wrought iron fence, or something like down the border. You're always going to have someone who's going to be able to break into that stuff. But honestly, I don't really like the split rail aspect of this. So that's it.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Do we have any comments? Anybody in favor?
We have no public testimony on this item.
All right, so nobody in favor, nobody opposed, no one neutral position. Final offer, anybody, nobody, and we'll close the public hearing. We'll start with City Council discussion on this. I just wanted to make a couple comments after. I just wanted to make sure that we got to the public hearing first. I believe we had a discussion a while back, and one of the reasons for chain link fencing was, as Robert alluded to, was the fact that we do have some homeless issues on these smaller lots. And I know it's not very attractive sometimes, but it's a manageable fence that can keep lots clean, as we have a huge problem with debris in lots. And so I do think we need to keep that option for our planning department and our community development department to be able to give those options. Posting cable, for the most part, is something I think is attractive. I'm not sure what the other fencing exactly is, but it sounds like it's not. I'm not sure, but I don't care how many options are in there. I just don't want to give away the other options of fencing. So I'm on the same page with, sounds like, some of you. With that said, any other comments? Jan, anything?
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem regarding the fencing, the rail fencing.
Russell, anything else?
Yeah, I got some comments on the block wall color. I think when it originally came through, somebody said no gray block, which is basically, construction block for you to use for your foundation. And I think the designation that needs to be made is, if we haven't put it in there already, is that the block must be a landscaping type block if it's going to be used for a wall. And I think originally what happened, somebody said, oh, I'm going to save some money. I'm going to go put the gray foundation block up, and it doesn't look good. It looks like gray foundation block wall. So is that designation in here that designates not just gray, but gray? I don't mind gray as a color if it's a landscaping gray to block. Is that covered in here in this ordinance?
No, it specifically allows for any kind of precision block wall to match or complement the existing structure on the lot.
Okay, so I would like to have added into this resolution when we do this, that construction block wall, whatever the technical term for that is, construction foundation block, is not permitted as fence block. That way we can, maybe Danny knows the technical term for that. I'm trying to put him on the spot. He may just say, yeah, it's foundation block, but I just don't, I would like to.
Let me jump in real quick, because the way I read it, it says you can use an appropriate block material as long as it is painted to match the exterior structure of the car. So if they're using a plain gray concrete block, but they're going to go ahead and paint that the color of the house, whether that's green or red or whatever to match, I don't have an issue with using that block as long as it's painted to match to what the ordinance says is to paint it to match it.
I think that would be some exception that the planning department would have some latitude to do. If they're going to take that, if they're going to take construction block and apply a plaster or some other coating to it that is appropriate, okay, fine. Then
and it says that.
It says that in the ordinance?
It says that in the ordinance. It says as long as it is covered with an appropriate color matched material.
Okay, I would just like to make sure the ordinance is clear on that point, and if it's in there, great. The other thing is on the chain link fence, I don't like the idea of a chain link fence on these large properties, and I understand the concept of the split rail. I grew up in a city where everything was split rail, Rolling Hills Estates, and it becomes a very attractive signature of the city. In fact, Rolling Hills Estates, when you look at their city logo, has split rail fence as a component of their logo. It's a very prominent feature. It's an upgraded look. And if you go out to Hemet and San Jacinto and drive through there, you see a lot of split rail. And I believe that's probably their requirement along the large acreage that hasn't been developed yet. It's effective at keeping vehicles out. I don't think anything's effective at keeping homeless out. The chain link fence isn't going to work. So, it's a matter of aesthetics. And I think the Planning Commission did a good job to step up the game and say, hey, we're going to make things look better in the city. So I'm not and the post and cable, I agree with the mayor. That's much more attractive than the chain link fence. There is some hazard to that if you're zipping along on a motorcycle and happen to don't see the cable part of the post and cable. I don't know if we need to do something about that, But I like what came out of the Planning Commission regarding the split rail. I think it's a way to upgrade the city. I don't know if there's any practical considerations to it. We didn't have anybody from the public here wildly objecting to the concept of the split rail. So I don't know. I would say that the Planning Commission got that one right to do away with the chain link fence. I know it's for economy's sake. The developer loves, or whoever owns the large piece of property loves the chain link. It's just a matter of where we want to go on the look and, you know, the city. Well, you can see these chain link fences where they're just gathering all kinds of trash. You see that when you come up Palm Drive. It blows and it gets just it's like a big net to catch everything that's littering the side of the road. So I'm probably outvoted on this one, but I say the Planning Commission got it right.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion then that we adopt the ordinance, removing the Planning Commission's recommendations to eliminate chain link on the front of vacant 5-acre properties and to continue to allow post and wire fencing and to allow split rail.
I have one more question, Mr. Mayor.
Hold on a second before you guys, hold on. Robert was next in the queue. Robert?
I do have to agree in terms of the chain link fence. I mean, it can be pretty unsightly, and then it does catch a lot of stuff. And depending on where it's located, it can end up just being this massive, just not even chain link. It's just this solid fixture. And I know we have some issues up with the fence up here on Pearson, where Tuscan Hills is, where they keep putting the coverings up and they keep blowing off. I'm just, honestly, I'm really not a fan of the split rail. I know it looks good in some communities. I just think in the desert, it's going to dry and crack real fast. I wouldn't have a problem replacing the front with the post and wire. You see that quite frequently. That would be my option, but we'll see how this comes out.
All right, before I go back to Russell, Gary, repeat your motion.
I'd move that we remove that we adopt the change in the ordinance, but remove the Planning Commission recommendations to eliminate chain link on the front of 5-acre vacant properties and to continue to allow for post and wire fencing as well as the split rail as recommended.
Is there a second? I'll second that motion. Mr. Betts?
Yeah, is in that motion also included confirmation that raw concrete, gray cement foundation block will not be allowed to be used without the ordinance?
So if I can clarify, the precision block is the same smooth type face block, but we are going to require that it match the building. So if it's a gray building and it matches the gray block, just like if it's a tan building and it would match the tan block, a finish would not be required. However, if it does not match or does not complement it, then it would require a finish as written.
Okay, so if I want to use cheap construction block for my wall, which is, you know, under $1 a block versus $2.50 a block, then all I have to do is paint my house gray and I can use the cheap gray block. And I think we got a serious aesthetic problem here. And I really think we need to make sure in this motion that raw, if it's precision, that's what you call it, precision block, needs to have a coating of either plaster or some approved coating that masks that it's just simple construction block. Foundation block isn't supposed to be shown.
Your point's been made over and over again, Mr. Best. Do you want to amend?
I want to know if it's in the motion is what I'm asking.
I'm going to get there if you allow me to. Your point's been made over and over again. Thank you. Mr. Gardner, would you like to amend your motion?
I don't know if we need to in that. If I read the text of it, it says exactly what Mr. Betts was looking for. It says here that, if I can find it, solid masonry fencing, provided the color of the masonry or stucco matches or complements the adjacent walls or structures.
Well, we just heard from Rebecca, who said that it can be, as long as the color matches, you can use simple, ordinary construction block for a decorative block wall. So if I won't repeat it again, I think I made myself clear. I got one other point. So this motion allows chain link fence where we've been using it before. So where it's been effective for block wall, for vacant lots, infill lots, we've seen a lot of this being used. And it actually has been effective at stopping the dumping on these lots. Will this motion allow that to continue?
Mr. Gardner?
Do you understand what I'm talking about? If you talk about the infill, Mr. Mayor, I think you mentioned it, on the infill lots, you have people have put up.
The infill lot, the way I read it, it has to be greater than 5 acres.
Okay, so right now we're allowing infill lots to put up chain link as a way to stop all the dumping that was going on in the vacant lots in the city, and it's been effective. So
Yes,
now we're going to go tell those people
exactly.
to
You're
remove
right
those,
on it.
and
Yeah.
we're going to allow it.
And in addition, I found another little part on this that says gray precision concrete block wall only if it matches or complements existing structures on the lot.
Yeah, it's the same thing. We're disagreeing on that point. You don't see a problem with it. I do. I got that. So we'll just see how, I would like to, so if we don't get an amended motion on that, I'll put in an amendment. But right now I would like to just stick on the, what are we allowing for these vacant lots? It's been very effective at stopping the dumping. I would like to see a little better quality when we allow that on those chain link, because right now what they do is they just stake the post, unwrap the fence, wire it. They never put a top rail.
It says in the ordinance draft that it has to have a top rail.
Okay, but you're talking about 5 acres, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about infill lot.
Well, infill lots right now don't allow it even under this ordinance. It has to be 5 acres or greater.
Well, somebody better tell the people where it's been allowed for people to do that, because it's popped up. And I remember from past council discussions, I thought that we allowed that because it was so effective at stopping the dumping. The choice was let somebody put up this chain link fence or end up with a lot full of this dumping. So all I'm asking is a simple question. Does your motion or does this ordinance change address that issue at all? Rebecca, can you answer that for us?
Yeah, so the current ordinance and what is existing for infill developed lots, residential developed lots that are greater than an acre do allow chain link fencing currently, and that is not being changed where it is not visible from the public right of way. On lots that are greater than 10,000 square feet, chain link fencing is only allowed on the rear property line as long as it is, again, not visible or adjacent to the right of way. This proposal adds the allowance for 5 acre or greater vacant lots to have chain link that was not permitted before.
Okay, so then what's going to happen as a result of this is code is now going to have to go out and notify everybody on those single home infill lots that they must remove that chain link fencing.
If they had chain link fencing, it would fall under the non-conforming fencing if it was built before our current code. And that requires removal at time of 25, I believe it's 25% destruction. They would not be able to replace it with chain link and be required to replace it with new fencing. So
Okay.
if code enforcement is aware of new chain link fencing that has gone up on a residential property, it is my understanding that they are already giving them citations and requiring them to get proper fencing. But yes, when there's an existing chain link fence, it isn't until it is damaged and needs to be replaced that it is required to be brought up to code.
Okay, so you're telling me the prior code allowed chain link fencing on infill lots?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I may. The answer to Russ's question, to council members Betts' question is yes. That is on page 137 of item 4 towards the lower half of the page. You could see that the only portions of this code that are proposed to be changed are in bold and underlined. The things that are not in bold and underlined have been there and have been there for years. So for example, little I, where it says in residential districts, little I, where the lot is 1 acre or greater, and when fencing is located only on the side and or rear property lines and must not be visible from public right-of-way regarding chain link fencing, that has been there for years. We are not recommending that change. As I said, the only changes that are being recommended are those in bold and underlined. And specifically with respect to chain link fencing, that's where you could find it on page 137 and 138.
Okay.
That answer your question?
Yes, it does. And the only thing I like to do is offer a amended motion that concrete construction grade block cannot be used for decorative wall, even if it matches the color of the existing structure, unless it has gotten some type of coating to upgrade its appearance.
Do I have a second on the amended motion? Final call. Go back to the original motion and I'll call for the question. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Betts,
No.
Councilmember Gardner,
Aye.
Councilmember Pai,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith,
Aye.
and Mayor Mattis.
Aye.
Motion passes with Councilmember Betts and Councilmember Pai opposed. This is a first reading and introduction of an ordinance of the City Council amending Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code Section 17.40.110 fences, walls, and hedges. The ordinance will return on May 19th for second reading and adoption.
Thank you, Gerald. Item number 5 is an ordinance amending Chapter 17.180 definitions of testing facilities to allow for cannabis facilities that are licensed by the federal government itself or by the state government itself. Community Development Director Rebecca Deming.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The city has a current definition in Chapter 5.50 for medical marijuana facilities, regulatory permits, and establishes a standard for granting permits for these medical marijuana or marijuana facilities, excuse me. In Chapter 17.180 of the Municipal Code, it establishes zoning regulations and development standards for these cannabis facilities, as the stated term is defined within the city. These testing facilities are specifically defined within the commercial and industrial districts of the city and are limited to those licensed by the state of California. The city has found out that basically the way the definition is written, it would require both regulatory permit and state permit. However, we want to make it very clear that the testing facilities that are federally licensed or contracted directly with the state are also permitted in testing zones. So it's basically a gray area right now as written, and we just want to make it very explicit. So therefore, the city is proposing to expand that definition of testing facility, as mentioned, to be specifically contracted by the state or lawful department thereof to perform research and development of the cannabis plant. The Planning Commission held its public hearing on April 14th and recommended approval of the City Council as proposed. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve when it's time.
I got to do the public hearing, then I'll let you do that. Is there any questions before I get to the public hearing? All right, we'll open the public hearing at this time. Do I have any testimony in favor, opposed, or neutral position, Gerald?
There's no public testimony on this item.
All right, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Betts?
Yeah, motion to approve. We're on item 6, right?
5.
5. All right, that's right. I had the wrong language in front of me. Well, we'll just do it the easy way. Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Is there a second? There's a second by Mr. Gardner. Any more comments by council? All right, with that, roll call, please.
Councilmember Betts,
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner,
Aye.
Councilmember Pai,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith,
Aye.
and Mayor Mattis.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. This is a first reading and introduction of an ordinance of the City Council, amending Chapter 17.180, definitions of testing facility to allow for cannabis facilities that are licensed by the federal government itself or by the state government itself. The ordinance will return on May 19th for second reading and adoption.
All right, move to item number 6, an ordinance amending section 17.12.080, convenience stores, commercial districts, and 17.16.060, convenience stores, industrial districts of the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code regarding convenience stores. Community Development Director Rebecca Deming.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code, commercial and industrial districts regulate the development standards and regulations of convenience stores. The proposed ordinance seeks to amend the convenience store standard in both these districts to delete the requirement that convenience stores be separated by 1,000 feet from each other or a school, and to delete the requirement related to public payphones. Staff is proposing this as it is very outdated requirement. A lot of times you see gas stations with convenience stores right across the street from each other. It fosters competitiveness and brings in more businesses. And obviously we're proposing to remove public payphones because those just are outdated as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions before I open up the public hearing? Yes, Gary.
Really quickly, the removal of the payphone requirement that's in there. I understand why it's in there in the first place, keep people from calling in, making drug deals and all of that stuff. But if we remove that, could they put in a payphone that people could call into, and maybe the chief would be the one to answer that? Would that cause a problem? I mean, paid phones, I can't think of the last time I actually saw a working payphone, but I don't know if do we want to open that window? Would it create a problem?
I haven't seen a working payphone, so we just thought we'd clean it up while doing it. That's completely up to council if you want to leave it. It basically just says if a payphone's installed, then they can't take incoming calls. We just didn't really see that as a necessary requirement anymore, but you're welcome to leave it in.
But
they don't install them anymore, period.
Pardon? Nobody's installing them anyway.
Right.
But, those that still have them, if we take this out, could they convert it? Would it be an issue? I just don't want to cause a problem if we.
Chief, can you get on here? I don't believe there's a payphone in town anywhere that's still operational, is there?
No, I think those went away with the beeper. I don't remember seeing it.
All right, that's it.
You can pick up a phone on any of the non-essential streets in Desert Hot Springs. They give them away. Any other council comments?
Let's have a comment when it's time.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to look back to the public hearing to make my comment.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll open a public hearing this time. We'll take testimony in favor, opposed, or neutral position. Gerald, do we have anybody?
Nope. We have no public testimony on this item.
All right. We'll close public hearing at this time. Go back to the council discussion. Mr. Betts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would like it to just say no public phones rather than, just have the ordinance say that there can be no pay phones in front of any businesses in Desert Hot Springs, period, done. Not that, not taking out the language referencing them, just saying they are not allowed. All of the ones that were around are sitting as empty shells, ugly, unsightly. That may be getting cleaned up now, but I think there's still some pay phones in town. They're just not in use, and nobody's maintained them. They went to private companies, and of course they died. So I would like this to say that payphones are not allowed in front of any businesses in Desert Hot Springs, if it doesn't say that already.
Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation, but with reference to payphones that they not be allowed in front of a business, working or unworking.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I may, the only item that's before the council at this time is just related to convenience stores. So if that is something that the city council would like us to bring forth, we could go ahead and do that.
That's what I meant at convenience stores. My apologies.
Okay.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Betts.
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner.
Aye.
Councilmember Pai.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith.
Aye.
And Mayor Menace.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. This is the first reading and introduction of an ordinance of the City Council, amending sections 17.12.080, convenience stores, commercial districts, and 17.16.060, convenience stores, industrial districts of the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code regarding convenience stores. The ordinance will return on May 19th for a second reading and adoption.
Hey, Gerald, we'll move on to the administrative calendar. It's item number 7, an ordinance amending the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code in order to establish a board to hear appeals involving California Building Code issues. Community Development Director Rebecca Deming.
Thank you, Mayor Council. I'm actually going to have Keith Hightower, our building official, go ahead and do the staff report and presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The City of Desert Hot Springs recently adopted the 2019 edition of the California Building Code. Section 1.8.8.1 of the CBC requires every county and city to establish a process to hear appeals of cases involving the CBC. The appeals may be heard by the legislative body or a separate appeals board. Currently, the city does not have a process to hear appeals relating to the CBC. The proposed ordinance will establish that process. The proposed ordinance will create an appeals board pursuant to Chapter 2.24 of the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code. In other words, the appeals board will be created in the same manner as all other boards and commissions, with minor exceptions. Since the appointments are generally made in January of odd number years, the proposed ordinance clarifies that there is an important need to appoint members to the appeals board as soon as practical. Further, in order to appoint as many qualified individuals as possible, membership is not limited to city residents. The proposed ordinance will add section 15.03.040 to establish the administrative procedures to review CBC issues. In particular, only the decisions by the building official regarding an interpretation of the CBC and related regulations may be appealed within 14 days of that decision. Once the form is, the proposed ordinance will add section 1503.040 to establish the administrative procedures to review CBC issues. In particular, only the decisions of the building official regarding an interpretation of CBC and related regulations may be appealed within 14 days of that decision. The appellant must fill out a form and pay a fee. Once the form is accepted and the fees paid, the appeal will first be heard by an administrative hearing officer. The hearing officer will be a third party selected by the city manager. The hearing officer's decision may be appealed within 14 days to the appeal board. The appeals board will consist of 5 members knowledgeable in the building code, regulations, and ordinances. The appeals board role is limited to determining whether there was a substantial evidence to support the hearing officer's decision or whether the hearing officer made any errors of law. New evidence will generally not be submitted. If the appeals board upholds the hearing officer's decision, the appellant then and only then has the option of appealing to the Superior Court. The proposed ordinance includes minor changes to various sections in Title IV to allow code compliance cases to be appealed to the appeals board if the issues involving building code matters. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Keith. At this time, did you have anything else to add, Rebecca? Oh, I thought I saw your hand up. You didn't have anything to add. Okay, we'll go to council member comments. Anyone?
I make a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Do I have a second?
I'd like to second it, but I want to make a comment and amend it slightly.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The appeals board that we're doing in here is required by state law, and the city council is clearly not equipped to deal with something as detailed and technical as this, so it requires engineers and building experts. And as drafted, the ordinance has each council member appointing someone like we do to the other commissions. In this case, it doesn't make sense to me because the board will only be used occasionally. In fact, it's never been used in the city, to my knowledge, in my conversations with staff. We've never had to actually have this. That's one of the reasons that the ordinance expands it to include people that are not registered voters in Desert Hot Springs, because we may need to reach over to another valley city to find a qualified engineer to sit on this panel. And because it requires them to have such expertise, and because we're not using this, it doesn't make sense, I think, for the council to be appointing this. It makes more sense to me to delegate that authority to the city manager to find 5 people if and when this actually has to be pulled into effect. It'll be a lot easier, a lot quicker, and then we don't have to go through that to figure that out on those rare occasions when it's needed. So if I can amend Councilmember Pai's motion to just change the ordinance to require or to allow the city manager to appoint the members of that commission as opposed to the city council.
Ms. Pai, would you accept that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a second on Ms. Pai's motion?
He seconded, he asked for an amendment.
Yeah, he seconded it with an amendment. So are you withdrawing? Hold on a second, everybody. So Mr. Gardner, are you withdrawing your second?
I'll withdraw my second.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second at this time. I need to ask if there's any public comments.
We have no public comments.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to council member comments at this time. I see Mr. Griffith's hand up.
Okay, so my take on this is that, so we have to get an appeals board, right? For these building code issues. Is that something that we do like would with the planning commission, and we post it on there, and then we hope that we'll get qualified people? Do we have minimum qualification requirements for this?
Currently, the appeals board is the city council, correct?
Well, is your question, Mr.
Rebecca?
Mayor? I'm sorry.
Keith or Rebecca, currently the appeals board is the city council, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay, but for this, this is to actually have an appeals board that is not city council, correct? And so is there minimum requirements for these people have to meet in order to be on this board? I don't know much about, I can certainly pull up the details of building codes, but I would imagine are we setting some minimum standards for people that are on this board?
The definition in the building code is very brief. It just reads that they should be knowledgeable in the application of building codes, regulations, and ordinances.
Okay, and so would this work similar to the other commissions where you appoint and they're there for 2 years? And then what if they never meet? We never use them? I'm just trying to figure out. And also, they don't have to be within the city, so how do we advertise that outside of the city would be kind of my questions.
That again gets to the point that I had. It makes much more sense to have the city manager make the if and when we need it.
Let me get staff to answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, advertising, we could reach out to other building officials we know and things like that. It would be definitely, as Councilmember Gardner says, easier to appoint it as needed. But that would be more difficult if it was done by council, because we'd be able to reach out and see who is available on a specific hearing date, from other, say, building officials, or like you said, engineers that are and understand the building code that would be able to sit on the appeals board. But it's really up to council how they would like to move forward with appointing this board, or if they'd like it to, sit for a longer period and not be used, versus trying to bring it together as needed.
So the current motion that's out there is for the city council to appoint the board.
I have discussion.
I understand. So the current council the council would appoint the board as we did with the architectural and review board, was kind of an example of what the current motion is. Mr. Betts?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. We at one time had an architectural review board. It was outside professionals. To the question of how do you find somebody, it's incumbent upon each council member to do a good search, make sure the people you're hiring are qualified, understand the California Building Code, have some expertise in that area. And I think it's absolutely necessary to go outside the city to find that if you can't find it within the city. And I think that we had that on that architectural review board. A name that might come up, and I don't want to drop names here, but Chris Mills, from, certainly an architect. He's had some involvement in the city, designed the architect for the Health and Wellness Center. You might reach out to him. And so, you go reach and you find these professionals out there. The idea is they're getting into some technical interpretations of the building code where the person who's having the difficulty may be, disagreeing with the city staff's interpretation. Now, to the question of why don't we just have the city staff appoint the person? Well, now you've got judge, jury, and executioner going on. The idea is that we're appointing an independent panel, even independent of us, of qualified people to review these disputes. You're not having the old story where the guy shows up and writes the ticket, then you go to argue in front of the judge, and the judge is the same guy that wrote the ticket, just wearing a different hat. And that may be an extreme example, but that's the same concept. So the point of this is to have an independent body that's going to act as a quasi-judicial body to provide some fair and review of these technical issues. So, but each, the quality of this board is going to be up to each council member, how hard you're going to work to go find somebody who's qualified. And I think we're all up to that task. I'm certainly know I can go find out. Somebody don't go race off and get Chris Mills ahead of me. But anyhow, the other question I had was, and then as far as them serving, when something comes up, they serve, and you let them know. It may not be the most active committee. You're not going to meet all the time, but these guys are going to know when they meet. They're going to know what the subject matter is. They're going to know what they're talking about, and they're going to be able to jump right in and do it when the need arises. What else? So that would be what I had. That's why I was quick to second Councilwoman Pai's motion on this as stands, because I really feel strongly that staff is not somebody that could appoint these positions.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a quick comment before I get to you, Gary. You're next. I'm on the fence with this one. The problem I have is I look back after 11 years on the city council, the architectural review committee was a disaster some years. It had great qualifications and people just could not commit to make the meetings. And then it became political, and then people started appointing people that they thought were qualified and maybe weren't qualified. And then it became people that didn't like the building department. There was some appointees to that just did not like the building officials at all. And so the question is, do we want to make it political? Do we want to make it an appointment of each council member and it becomes a political appointment? Or do we want, I don't understand. I understand, but I understand what you're saying, Mr. Betts, too, that the city's the one being appealed, and then you have the question is, does our city manager have enough integrity to find 5 good people to be on appeals? And our current city manager does, in my eyes. So I'm on the fence either way. I'll wait to listen to the rest of the comments. Mr. Gardner?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, you're saying that we're appointing the judge, jury, and executioner, but we already have done that in this case. City manager is also the person who's appointing the hearing examiner in the first place. That if the hearing examiner decision is overruled, then it would go to this body. And if you're finding I don't see a way to necessarily stack the deck on that one. He's got to appoint 5 good people to do this. And again, we haven't had to use this in the entire history of the city. It's never been called upon. I doubt very seriously it would be called upon in the future. And I just think that in the rare case where this is going to be used, it makes much more sense from a timing standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint and from even a fairness standpoint that we have the city manager appoint the commission when it is required to have a commission. If not, then we're out of it. Otherwise, we're playing politics with it, just as the mayor said. It becomes political, like the Architectural Review Board was. And even if we all individually appoint somebody and they can't meet on the rare occasions this is, that makes far more sense from an administrative standpoint in my book to just have the city manager be the person to appoint this rarely used, if ever, commission. And that's where I'll leave it at.
Mr. Griffin?
Mayor, can I rebut that quickly? We did have, remember Glenn Tucker, who served in this capacity to be his law firm to be. So we did have this in place. I think staff's coming through with a different way to handle what we did. The other way to handle this would be to get an independent law firm that's appointed by the council, and they have the qualifications and capability of doing this. But, as much as I love our city manager, the way it's going to be viewed to anybody who's going on appeal is, and they already have that sense now, is, okay, great, I'm going to go appeal to the guy who appointed the appeal board. And to the board that was appointed by the guy who already disagreed with me. It just doesn't make sense. It's just, it falls on its face on that regard. And I don't know if, don't appoint political appointees, appoint people that are good, qualified people. I'm sure everybody's capable of doing that. And I'm not exactly sure why the Architectural Review Committee didn't work. Maybe they had trouble meeting. I think problem was an attendance issue, as I remember it, but I would defer to the mayor's recollection of that. He was here at the time and I do acknowledge that there was a difficulty with that. But maybe the best approach would be to continue this one, think about it further, come back and see what else we're going to do. I personally like the idea. I think it's good. I have no problem finding a qualified person that could do this. There's lots of architects out there that would be happy to serve on this board. It's going to take a little bit of work on our part to go seek them out and put in place what the staff envisioned as a good way to handle this.
Mr. Griffin?
Okay, not to drag this out, but I just have some questions. So I know we did the thing. So the city manager appoints this hearing examiner, is that what it is? And they don't agree with that person, so then we're looking at an appeal. So what is the time period between what is the time requirement between the time that appeal is filed and we have to hold a hearing? Is there a limit?
Are you talking about it's 14 days from when the initial denial, obviously, or approval, the initial denial or approval is done. The applicant would have 14 days to appeal the hearing officer's decision to the appeal board. Is that what you're asking? Or are you asking how long it would take somebody how long it would take the Board of Appeals to make a decision?
How long does the Board of Appeals have to make a
They
decision?
have to file. So if they have 14 days to file their appeal, correct?
Right.
And then how much time do we have in order to have a hearing with this group?
So I don't see in the ordinance where it says, for instance, where we have to have a hearing within 30 days of filing. It gives us time to make sure that the commission is available and to set a time. All it requires is us to notify the applicant or the appellant 7 days prior to the scheduled meeting.
Okay, so that would in fact give us time to conduct a search and bring people in, as opposed to having a set board that will sit for 2 years and do nothing kind of thing, right?
Well, I think that my only concern with that is that you have to have the hearing within a reasonable time. And so in many occasions, reasonable just means reasonable, but on many occasions that means within 30 days.
Okay.
Jan?
I really see both sides of this. That's my thing, is I can see how it could be perceived as not a fair process if the person appointing the hearing officer is the one appointing the commissions. And that's a concern to me. I have no problem with our city manager. What happens 5 years down the road, maybe, or 10 years down the road? I have some questions about how it's all set up, and so that's what's going on in my mind. I'll shut up.
Jan?
I would not have a problem if we appointed an attorney to do it, but to have the same person, city manager, that code enforcement reports to, denies it, and then have the city manager appoint someone, that's not transparent to me. But if you want to change it where there's an attorney, not our attorney, I can go with them.
I think that'd be a good alternative if we go that way. I would go that way also.
I could go with that if we change this to have an outside law firm appointed to review it. I don't know if that would cost any more or less, but I would be okay with that.
I'd be okay with it if it was as long as it's a law firm that understands building issues. It has to be a government, a public officials. I don't even know what the word is. I'm getting tired. Someone that deals with these issues. So
I accept the amendment.
I'll second the amendment.
Is there any more discussion?
Before we vote on it, run it by just so we know what we're all voting on here.
Hold on. Is there any more? Okay, yeah. Go ahead and repeat the motion, Jen.
I'm recommending staff's recommendation, except the replacement is we do not hire commissioners, we hire an attorney.
Familiar with building code issues or building issues.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, members of council, the CBC specifically requires that either a board be appointed in this fashion, or the city council is the de facto appeals board. Nowhere does it say, unfortunately, that we can hire an independent, attorney to act as the appeals board. So those are the two situations. I believe that's correct, Keith. I think it's under 1.8.8.1.
That's correct.
Should take you a long time to look up that legal code.
Could I ask this question, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Did the city council appoint an independent attorney firm to make a decision and have the council as the appeal board?
I'm sorry, to have the independent attorney firm
The independent attorney hear the case and give a recommendation to the city council as the appeal board.
What I'm hearing,
that's what the hearing officer. You technically could do that, but that's what the hearing officer would. You already have a hearing officer who's heard the matter, and the city council would hear that. Either rule on that hearing officer's decision. So you want a middle step to have somebody hear it to make a recommendation to the appeals board?
So I guess I'm trying to get rid of all our issues here. So let's go back to the city manager to make a recommendation on a hearing officer, which would be an independent attorney. We would then ratify that. The attorney would then give us their opinion as a hearing officer, and the council would just be the appeal board, rather than trying to hire or find people that are in this industry. Does that appeal to the council at all?
As long as our city attorney is not going to stop it.
I guess, and forgive me, I guess I'm not understanding. It seems to me like that's a third layer.
Trying to take it out.
Can I jump in, Mayor?
So the city manager would make a recommendation on the hearing officer, correct? That's how it currently goes, right?
Correct.
So the hearing officer would be a independent. We're asking that hearing officer to be an independent attorney that deals with these types of issues.
That is correct.
They would then recommend, and the board would be the city council. Just keep it at the city council level. We would hear the appeal.
You are more than welcome to do that. That is correct. The city council could hear the appeal. The hearing officer, however, would not make a recommendation. You would be determining whether or not the hearing officer's decision was proper or not.
Correct.
Yeah. So you could keep it at the city council level if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, and Russ, are you guys more comfortable with that?
Yes, so can I restate it?
Yes.
Okay, staff's recommendation that a attorney be appointed to give the council advice or recommendation. Okay, Jennifer, would you help me with this?
Sure, of course. As I hear it, and maybe I'm incorrect, what I'm understanding from the mayor is that you don't necessarily want the special appeals board. Instead, you want the city council, the city council to hear the appeals. Is that correct?
And you want that level. You want that level of an attorney to give to the council a recommendation.
Excuse me if I may, it sounded to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what the mayor was recommending is that the city manager put in place as the hearing officer a law firm that is versed in California building code, who would sit as the initial hearing officer. That hearing officer then would make their determination, and if the applicant was unhappy with that determination, it would then elevate to the city council, who would sit as the appeals board. Is that accurate?
That wasn't what I heard. What I heard was close to that, but Mr. Mayor, if I may, what I heard was the city council will appoint somebody to provide them technical advice from a legal standpoint as an independent law firm, such as maybe Glenn Tucker did, to help guide them during an appeal that would come to the city council. So the motion, I think, would be we keep the city council as an appeal board, but instruct the city manager to bring us law firms that are qualified to advise the council on building code issues in a public hearing setting. That's what I heard.
Let me see if I can tweak that just a tad to see what
Wait, please.
Yep.
I made the motion. Hold on. Jennifer, does that work?
I understood it how Ms. Wilms understood it. So if that is your motion, which is, and let me clarify it. It is to have a hearing officer who's familiar with building code do the first level hearing, and then any appeal of that hearing officer, instead of going to the separate appeal board, it would go to the city council.
That hearing officer must be an attorney that is versed in these things. That can be a recommendation by the city manager, ratified by the city council.
We could do that. That's how it is current. The hearings officer portion is currently written as an independent hearings officer. We could add that it is an attorney who specializes or is knowledgeable, I guess, of building issues.
Can I jump in? Maybe it might make a little more sense to table this for a couple of weeks and let Jennifer try to figure this out and bring us back another option in 2 weeks.
I would suggest continue it to a date certain rather than table it.
Well,
or continuing, whatever. Have her redraft this with that.
Currently, I have a motion and a second on the table, so we must.
Jennifer has figured it out.
So currently, Jan's motion is to have a hearing officer appointed by the city manager that is an attorney versed in these issues, ratified by the city council, and the city council is the appeal board.
Mm-hmm.
There's a motion and a second on the table. Do you want to continue your second, Mr. Betts?
Yes.
All right. Is there any amended motions? So at this time, the motion and the second wants to continue. Do we have any public comments on this, or did I already ask this, Jerome?
No, we have no public comments.
We'll go to a roll call vote.
Councilmember Betts?
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner?
Yes.
Councilmember Pai?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith?
Aye.
And Mayor Mattis?
Aye.
Thank you. For me, it's clear. Thank you.
That worked.
A motion unanimously. This is an introduction and first reading of an ordinance of the City Council adding Chapter 2.72 Appeals Board to Title II Administration and Personnel, amending sections 4.16.085 Public Nuisance Hearing, amending various sections of Chapter 4.16.110 Procedures for Appeal of a Notice of Public Nuisance and Order to Abate of Title IV Public Nuisances, and adding sections 15.03.040 to Chapter 15.03 Administration of Title 15 Buildings and Construction of the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code in order to establish a board to hear appeals involving California building issues. Ordinance was amended and it will come back on May 19th for second reading and adoption.
I move to item number 8, disbandment of the Community and Cultural Affairs Commission. Assistant City Manager Dory Wilms.
Mayor, City Council. Tonight before you is an item to introduce for first reading and read by title only, an ordinance of the City Council, amending Chapter 2.44 of the Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code, disbanding the city's Community and Cultural Affairs Commission, and granting certain authority to the city manager or his/her designee. So on February 4th, 2020, the City Council directed staff to bring an ordinance to disband the Community and Cultural Affairs Commission. To provide a little bit of background and discussion, on June 4th of 2002, the City Council adopted an ordinance to create the Desert Hot Springs Community and Cultural Affairs Commission to facilitate public programs, services, and facilities to enhance the quality of life of its residents and its visitors, promote the city's aesthetic environment, increase property values, and vitalize economic activities within the city. The CCAC consists of 5 members appointed by 1 member of the City Council. It's ratified by a majority vote of the City Council, and members are currently appointed for 2-year terms. Excuse me, the primary purpose of the Community and Cultural Affairs Commission is to function in an advisory role to the City Council with the following duties. Recommend a planned approach for the delivery of leisure, recreation, and community services. Recommend and implement such programs and activities which foster mutual understanding and respect amongst cities' racial, religious, ethnic, and nationality groups. assess the public art needs of the city, and recommend the development, maintenance, and preservation of public art. They are also to analyze community programs' effectiveness and needs. For the past several years, the city has encountered some concerning situations within the CCAC. These issues include a lack of commitment of commissioners, with many failing to complete their terms, cancellation of community events due to poor planning, infighting, and lack of leadership, high vendor costs due to inconsistent procurement practices. Those are to name a few. In an effort to streamline the duties of the commission and be more inclusive of the community as a whole, staff is recommending the disbandment of CCAC as a formal commission in favor of delegating the roles and responsibilities to the city manager or his or her designee, who will create small ad hoc committees comprised of community members with specific skill sets and interests who can assist on a project-by-project basis. This will also allow the opportunity to standardize procurement of services for the various events and programs put on for the community. The Art and Public Places processes that did funnel through the Community and Cultural Affairs Commission will continue in its current form. However, rather than going before the CCAC for the initial review of the proposed art, the initial review would be conducted via an administrative review process before proceeding to the City Council for final review and approval. One last note that I do want to make, this was brought up in questions with a council member. There were some other services, I guess, or services wouldn't be the right word. Over the past several years, we would have outside organizations approach the Community and Cultural Affairs Commission asking for donations for various events that may go on, and we were asked whether or not that would be something that would be allowed to continue through the delegate of the city manager. And one of the things that I talked with the council member about and want to make sure that we all discuss it here is there is already a process in place for organizations, individuals to approach the city to seek out donations. So that process would not funnel through the designee of the city manager. It would go through the standard process that we already have in place for folks seeking donations. And if it's above the city manager's authorization level, it would go to the city council for authorization. So I wanted to make sure that we addressed that, as that was a question. Finally, the CCAC budget was $20,000. And that line item budget would continue and would be utilized by the city manager or his or her designee to facilitate events, programs, and public art within the city of Desert Hot Springs. That concludes my staff report, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Cheryl, do we have any public comments?
We have none.
All right, let's start with Ms. Pye.
Was my question that was answered, and I'm fine. And they also told me that the Christmas tree is a totally separate thing, and it's not part of the $20,000, so I'm comfortable.
Correct.
Mr. Gardner?
I thought you saw me shaking my head. I have no questions.
Okay. Mr. Betts?
Yeah, a couple questions. One, when this came up before, I was real surprised to see some members of the public, including present commissioners, come and say this is a good idea. I think they recognized some of the things that were going on. I think maybe at some point in the future, maybe this commission will come back in some form, but I think it's pretty much recognized by everybody that there's been some problems there, and a couple of times where the city manager said, you guys, when you finally figure this out, let me know, but I'm going to go ahead and just get this done, and he did. And that's increasingly taking place, and it just ends up being more work for staff to have to wrestle with something that they're going to end up doing anyhow because somebody else couldn't figure out how to get it done. The other thing was, I'm happy to see that we now have $20,000 in the budget for fireworks, so that's perfect. That's in this motion. Was the fireworks part of your staff recommendation? Anyhow, so I'm in agreement with this, and it's not something you take lightly. I don't think anybody here has, but when I saw the public come forward with support for this, especially the commissioner, says, okay, I'm all right with this.
And on that note, Councilmember Betts, we actually had those current, or they were just the previous sitting CCAC board members come and email us all sorts of helpful information. And the concerning situations that occurred over the last couple of years, I want to make sure that it's noted and very clear. this is not inclusive of all members that sat on that board. We had some very, very great commissioners that sat on that board, but it really needs to function with 5 members that are all hands on deck. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So thank you.
So that was drive-in fireworks, right?
Right.
Social distancing?
Right.
Mr. Griffith?
I have nothing to add.
All right, this time I'll entertain a, yes, Ms. Pye?
I want to move staff's recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second on the table. Any more discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Betts,
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner,
Aye.
Councilmember Pye,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Griffith,
Aye.
and Mayor Mattis.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. This is an introduction and first reading of an ordinance of the City Council, amending Chapter 2.44 of the Municipal Code, disbanding the city's Community and Cultural Affairs Commission and granting certain authority to the city manager or his or her designee. The ordinance will come back on May 19th for second reading and adoption.
All right, move to future agenda items. You can discuss that with the city manager's office. Any other public comments pop in at the end there, Mr. Suriano?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, with that, our next meeting is, where's my calendar? Let's see here. Our next meeting will be on the 19th of May via teleconference, and I think there might be a special meeting later this month also. We'll get back to you on that. And with that, we are adjourned and the recording will end.
Good night, everybody.
Right.
Okay.